And we are live. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're having a wonderful day. It is Friday, September 16th, 2022, and it's iPhone 14 launch day. That's right. If you manage to get your pre-order quick enough, maybe you have them in hand already. If you're waiting for them to come to your door with anticipation, Karen feels what that feels like because that's what she's doing right now. And yeah, we're going to go through, we got some news. We got some news, a little bit of rumors, and then we're just going to kind of dive into iPhone 14, watchOS 9, iOS 16, because this is the iMore show. I am your host, Luke Philippoj, writer for iMore, joined as always by Stephen Warwick, iMore's news editor. How you doing, Stephen?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, I believe you have both the iPhone 14 and an
Do
iPhone
indeed.
14 Pro
Yep.
in your hands. So if anyone has any questions about either device, I know, Stephen, you've only had them for a few hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
If people want to ask questions, feel free to let Stephen or let us know, and we'll get to them. And always joined by the lovely Karen Freeman, iMore contributor. How are you doing, Karen?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Not too bad. As I mentioned, you are waiting for your phone. Which phone are you waiting for?
I'm waiting for my iPhone 14 Pro in deep purple, of course. I've got my purple. I'm wearing purple for all the good mojo to get it here quicker, but it's supposed to arrive this afternoon sometime.
It's okay. You can be a real sad sack like me who doesn't have anything coming. So I'm probably going to upgrade to the 14 as a Christmas present to myself, I think, but that'll be a few months down the road. Yeah, you know what, Stephen, let's just dive into this. What's your initial impressions, kind of like first few hours with the phones? What are you thinking?
So just for background, I have come from the iPhone 13 Pro, and I am on the upgrade program, so I get a new phone each year. So I've had the 12 Pro, the 13 Pro, and I have bought the iPhone 14 Pro, and I also have the iPhone 14 in for review. I'll start with the Pro. The Pro is fantastic. I absolutely love this. The dynamic island looks incredible. It does not look good in direct sunlight. That is when you have any kind of ambient light on it, it really like shows up as the kind of two, the pill and the like the exclamation mark kind of configurations. In bright sunlight, it does look a bit like, ugh. But when it's in normal lighting conditions and stuff, the interface is really, really nice. The display, I know the display's not any different, but the display still looks fantastic. The always on display is a bit like disconcerting at first. You're looking, you're like, oh, I need to like lock my phone, and you're like, oh, it is locked. Having the time and the date and your like widgets and stuff and any notifications just there without having to look over and wait your phone, it sounds like a really like silly thing to do, but honestly it is a really, really helpful feature and a really big improvement. So always on display, really love the dynamic island so far. Even in, I'm literally looking down at it now, and even in this light, sometimes you catch a glimpse of the hardware underneath the island software. So it takes a bit of getting used to, but it is, even in like the setup process, the way they've integrated the island into like when you start on Face ID and you put your face in and stuff like that is really nice. So I'm really, really happy with this. And I went for Space Black. I wasn't sure. Purple's just not really me, and so I went with Space Black, which is a safe bet. The Space Black looks absolutely fantastic. The camera bump is really big on the back. You're really going to notice that when you get one, if you've upgraded even from the most recent one. Yeah, this is a UK model, obviously, so mine still has a SIM card tray and stuff like that. It's obviously, when you go from like a 13 Pro to a 14 Pro, there isn't like, because of iCloud and stuff like that, there's so much continuity, you almost like forget that you've got a new phone. But I'm super stoked so far. I've enabled my 48 megapixel camera and Pro RAW and stuff like that. Taken a couple of test shots. I have seen in some reviews, I think it was the Verge review, the image processing for the 48 megapixel stuff is really sharp, but like too sharp. And I did I took a photo and I looked at it and I went, ugh. So I need to do a lot more, testing and getting to grips with that and stuff. But I have seen, a couple of folks say like these images are like being sharpened way too much. And so that is interesting to see. But really, I mean, you're not going to notice, in the first couple of hours, you're new processor or the battery life or anything like that, but it has, held up well. And I've actually noticed both phones, they often get quite hot when you do like the restore and stuff like that, because there's a lot of downloading and processing going on, but neither of them have got, really too hot. And obviously Apple's kind of improved thermal performance and heat dissipation across the board this year. So yeah, iPhone 14 Pro, I am really enjoying so far. Really kind of happy that this is my daily driver for the next 12 months. iPhone 14, again, as a pro user, I'm fairly underwhelmed, I have to say. I know they've made some improvements on the previous model, and I'll be writing iMore's review for the iPhone 14, hopefully coming next week. But the spoiler, I think, is basically, I mean, the thing is, the Pro is so good this year. If anyone was thinking about buying the iPhone 14 Pro, if you're saved up money to buy it outright, or you're thinking about, getting it on like a carrier deal or the iPhone upgrade program, so you'll be paying monthly, I will be telling everyone to make some room in your budget and buy the Pro, because I don't know how you can recommend the iPhone 14 when the Pro is there. And if the cost is an issue, I would say get a 12 or a 13 or an SE, because yeah, it's the big things for me, obviously coming from the Pro, the back really takes fingerprints. Like I don't have it in a case just now because I'm trying to like enjoy the design. If you have it in a case, then you probably wouldn't notice this. But there's whatever the material on the back of the regular iPhone, it like harvests fingerprints. Is incredibly difficult to keep clean. In the same way that the side of the Pro is quite attractive to fingerprints, but it's obviously not as obvious. And then the other thing for me is the 120 hertz, the 60 hertz display, or going from 120 hertz. I have like I said, the 13 Pro, the 14 Pro, and also an iPad Pro, all with ProMotion. Using a 60 hertz display after that is really, really like tiresome, and it does feel like it's obviously not performance degraded, but it feels like performance because everything's just a little less snappy and a little less fluid. And when you look around the Android space and you can see similar hard like price point phones with 120 hertz LTPO, yeah, that was my initial reaction. I've not really had a chance to take the iPhone 14 camera out for a spin. But yeah, it's like I said, I'm super happy with my Pro, but this regular iPhone 14, I'm really struggling so far to think about like who exactly would want to buy this. So
yeah, Steven, I want to say we were talking kind of just before the call that I don't envy your position of reviewing the iPhone 14, because I think it's actually kind of a complicated review to sort of think about, because you want to review it in its current context, which is, it's not really much of an upgrade over the 13. The Pro's just so much better by, at least like I don't have it in my hands, but at least by the stat sheet and from what kind of most reviews are saying, the Pro is really where you should be if you have the ability to be there. But at the same time, like, is it a bad phone overall, right? Like if somebody was going to buy their first iPhone and they happen to pick up the iPhone 14, is that phone going to be a bad experience for them? I don't think you could say that it would be. So it's like this weird encompassing thing where like, as tech journalists and, we write for, those tech junkies, the people who want those, nitty gritty details, who want to hear, the harsh opinions, the real opinions. But at the same time, it's this weird kind of dichotomy. And I've seen some of this online. I've actually seen people talking about how like they're flabbergasted by, iPhone 14, just the base iPhone 14 reviews still getting like, like 4 stars, maybe like 3.5 stars. People are like, I'd give it a 1 star because like it's just an iPhone 13 again. And I was like, but was the iPhone 13 a bad phone? No, it wasn't. So
I don't think it's a bad
weird
phone. I think the issue is that it doesn't feel like a 2022 phone. It feels like maybe a 2020, 2021 maybe type of phone, but yet you're paying the price for a brand new cutting edge phone, which it isn't.
It is the best phone running iOS 16, priced at $799 that money can buy. Or $899 if you go for the iPhone 14
That's a very narrow
this is
a very narrow field to be
this
the
is
best
the thing.
of.
And again, I've still got a lot of kind of thoughts and more review to iron out and expand on. But like, yeah, if you need an iPhone right now and you've got the money to buy like the iPhone 14, I would be, say it is quite a jump, 799 to it'll be 999, wouldn't it, in the US
In
for
the States, yeah, it
Yes.
starts
the
there.
same size. It is a lot. Divide that by the number of months you're maybe going to use it, especially if you're on a very few people, I think, buy their phones outright these days. So if you're on a carrier plan or you're on a the cost isn't as much as it sounds, because it is quite a big price gap. But the trade-off, personally, I think is really, really worth it. And then if it's like, well, you definitely can't afford the iPhone 14 Pro and you need to buy an iPhone right now, I don't know why you wouldn't then either spend the extra money, get the Pro, or save more money and get a 13 or a 12 or an SE. Even it's a great year. There are so many iPhones in the lineup now, but that does make each one a little harder to place, a little more niche, like you said, Karen. So it's a strange one. But Luke, you're totally right. It's not a bad phone. It's the best not Pro iPhone Apple has ever made. It is the 13, and it has been improved on in several ways and iterated. But yeah, has it been improved enough to justify spending more on that than the 13? I'm quite skeptical. And like you said, it's not just in a bubble. So people are also, especially right now, are thinking about the cost of things and either monthly costs or upfront expenditure and things like that. And then there are still people who are lots of people who are either on Android or thinking about coming across, or like about to make the choice between Apple and Android. And if specs and features are important, there are going to be a lot of people looking at this price bracket and thinking, well, I could go. There are $200 Android phones with 120 hertz displays and AMOLED and things like that. So it is a tough sell. It's but like I said, it's only been a few hours, but that would be, I think that's where I'm headed. So
yeah, I think the two things I'm most interested in, I mean, I know you're not writing our iPhone 14 Pro review, but that's going to Christine. But I'm interested in your differences between the cameras, because I've heard similar things about the 48 megapixel kind of having some weird sharpening processing potentially going on. It also might just be that maybe we're just not used to seeing 48 megapixel pictures, and maybe they just look that good and they kind of creep us out. But it could also be a computational photography thing. There's so many processes when you take a picture on the iPhone that happen in an instant that like some of them can sometimes be overtuned or undertuned or what have you.
The new photonic engine as well will be doing some of that lifting, and so it is an adjustment.
Yeah, and it's, if you really get into the weeds of it, the new photonic engine's actually it's mainly actually talking about the processing that it does with computational photography, and they've switched up some of the steps. Like, for example, deep fusion used to be like the last step, and now it's like the first step that it goes through in order to. So deep fusion is applied to the completely uncompressed photo, which when it used to happen at the end, it would already went through its compression and everything, and then it would apply deep fusion. So that's just like one of the ways that the engine has changed. So it also might just be like something like the sharpening could just be like, maybe that's the way that Apple wants their photos to look now. You know what I mean? Maybe that's the way that they're
the good thing about 48 megapixel photos is there's more raw, literally pro raw data to work with when you take these photos and put them into like a Photoshop or like Pixelmator or whatever that case may be. So I think you're going to struggle to reap the benefits of the 48 mega, like just if you're just pointing and shooting and looking at pictures on your phone. But as you start to you'll see some really stunning results as people start to take these photos and apply, some like good editing practice. I think to having much more raw data in that sense, I think is
And my understanding of a megapixel picture, like 48 megapixels, is that you can crop it. So if you're a good distance away from something, you take a picture, you can crop in a specific part of the photo, and that photo will still look good.
Yeah, because it'll still be, if you crop it to like a quarter of the size, I guess basically it'll still be a 12 megapixel photo, which is the same quality as last year's iPhone 13 Pro, which those are great images. So yeah, absolutely. Megapixels in general really just mean bigger photos, but it's
Yeah, and the all of them got new sensors. They all have slightly bigger sensors. They handle light a little better. So yeah, I'm excited for that to see kind of your testings there. And also, I'm interested. I was just watching before the show. I was just watching the MKBHD review of the iPhone 14 Pro, and he was talking about that he thinks he says he can't justify it 100%, but he says that he thinks that the always on display is actually surprisingly using more battery than he was expecting it to, especially since it goes down all the way to 1 hertz when it's, on, and it's just sitting there. But he said that he plans on turning it off because he doesn't like how much the battery drain does. So I'm interested to see what your results will be with that.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on that.
He qualified it, I should say. He qualified it by like, you can't specifically say like there's nothing in the battery, like you can go into your battery settings and see where your battery's drained. There's nothing that specifically says always on display, but like he said, from his best guess of trying it out and figuring out where the battery is going, that he thinks that he is getting some battery loss because of that. So he turned it off and he was going to like talk about it again, I think, at some point.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see that, because like that was kind of, when we got these lock screen widgets in iOS 16 and stuff, everyone was like, oh, always on display would be so cool. But if it's really killing your battery more than you think that it was, is it worth it? I don't know at that point. But then it's like, are lock screen widgets worth it? I mean, I would say so. I still like using them, even though I don't have an always on display on my iPhone 11. So, yeah. Yes. So once again, if anyone has any questions about the iPhone 14 or iPhone 14 Pro, feel free to ask us. Steven might be able to answer them. He might be able to figure it out right now. He might be able to get back to you, or something that he can put into his review for the iPhone 14. So don't be afraid to ask. Yeah, let's move on to some interesting sort of news and rumors for the week. And then we can always come back to some of the newer stuff that launched this week at the end. But let's start off with, we just got finished with an event, so obviously let's talk about the next event, which we've kind of been expecting this for a while, but Mark Gurman from Bloomberg is saying that a 10th generation iPad with USB-C and an M2 iPad Pro and some Macs are coming in October.
Yes.
We know that like iPad, for example, iPadOS and macOS Ventura have both been extended. Once again, they're not specifically delayed because they just said fall, but there kind of was an expectation that stuff would be coming in September. But it makes kind of more sense to launch it on the new products. So Stephen, what is Gurman saying now? What are we hoping for?
Roughly kind of what you summarized, the iPad Pro with M2, which I believe is not really, I don't know if we've not really heard anything else about the iPad Pro, so it might just be like, a bit of a chip upgrade. The biggest change to iPad will be the new 10th gen, which is if you don't know, the base model. So currently the 9th generation iPad, which is the 9.7-inch display, still has Touch ID, $329. We've seen like some leaks and stuff like that this will be quite a big overhaul. So we're expecting a USB-C hub at the bottom instead of Lightning, which would be a big change. However, some of the renders we've seen, possible leaks, suggest that they might keep like the forehead and the chin, so that the chassis will change, so it'll look more like an iPhone 13 or 14 with the squared off edges, but the front of the device won't be like an iPad Pro with the thinner bezels and swipe up from the bottom and Face ID. It'll still have a home button and Touch ID, but so we're getting some of the new design language and some of the old things that make the iPad, the current base model, either cheap or popular, depending on kind of how you see that. And then the Apple apparently we're expecting lots of different M2 Macs. Apple's currently working on apparently so that the Mac Mini, a Mac Pro, and a MacBook Pro. And Mark says we can expect at least 2, maybe 3 in October. That basically means he's not sure kind of which ones or how many. But again, I don't really, apart from the Mac Pro, which because of the power of Apple Silicon might be due like quite a big design update. Mac Mini and the MacBook Pro, I think, are really just expected to be, extra processor options. They might not even be like new products. They might just be the MacBook Pro 14-inch and 16-inch and now available with the M2 processor. But we might see for the first time the next steps of M2. So the Pro and the Max and the Ultra, and maybe even this rumored Extreme, which will be like another iteration beyond the biggest Apple Silicon we have. So yeah, and again, like you said, Luke, these software updates, so iPadOS and macOS, have been delayed until October, and yeah, we would expect those to come when the new products come, kind of like we do with iPhone and Apple Watch.
Yeah, I think we'll have to see what everything is. I mean, maybe the M2 iPad Pro. I mean, like you said, we haven't really heard a lot about it except for the fact that it's going to be M2. So that might just be a processor upgrade, and that might kind of just be it. The 10th generation iPad kind of going to this like hybrid design of like the new language, but some of the old language as well. I'm super interested in because I kind of always had an affinity for the baseline iPad. And I just think it offers such a great value for its price point. So I'm like nervous hearing that it's going to like a new form factor, because that might mean, if that's new design and everything and new work, that might mean that price is going up. It's cool that it potentially is joining the USB-C crowd, which I think very slowly everything is going to become that. Obviously, iPhone 14 still isn't, AirPods Pro 2 still aren't, so there's still room to go. But I think it is eventually going to be the standard across Apple products, very slowly but surely. Yeah, and then as for Macs, I think like I've said this before, I'm just so happy with my M1 iMac that I have, that like I can't imagine needing to upgrade anytime soon. So it'll be cool for the people who are looking for the most power. I think we're all sort of interested to see what the Mac Pro is going to be, especially since Apple teased, earlier in the year that was their kind of only Mac left to kind of get the M series treatment. And yeah, the design could be very different than the current design for the Mac Pro, which is kind of like, the big cheese grater look. So maybe this design won't have $400 wheels. Maybe they'll be $300 wheels. Save some money on the wheels. Yeah, so that's the October event. We'll obviously probably hear more about that in the coming weeks. This probably, to Steven, this probably won't come as a surprise, but it seems that during pre-orders, the iPhone 14 Pro seems to be a hit, but the iPhone 14 Plus seems to be a flop.
Well, I called that before.
Yeah, Karen, you called this. Why do you think that the 14 Plus might be struggling a little bit?
Well, I mean, who's looking for that? It seems like a very small niche. The only person in my life that I can think of that might like the iPhone 14 Pro, I'm sorry, the iPhone 14 Plus, is someone that I know that does not own a computer. So her iPhone is her only computer. So she always orders a large phone. And in the past, she had to order the Pro Max because that was the only large phone available. And she didn't really want to spend that kind of money, but that was the only choice. But now, having a lower cost, large phone, for almost certain that will be her next phone.
Yeah, I think there's also a use case. Once again, it's a smaller market, but I think there's a use case for accessibility. I think bigger screens can really help people who are vision impaired, or even who have some fine motor trouble. Bigger screens can definitely help. So there's definitely obviously a market, but I think
it's pretty niche. I don't think the general public wants that sort of thing. I mean, obviously not, because it's not doing well. I think the numbers will creep up over time because the people who are interested in that kind of phone are not going to be the launch day, setting the alarm, waking up early and ordering crowd.
Yeah.
That crowd is generally going to be more likely to order Pro phones.
Totally.
But I don't know if it'll do as poorly as the Mini and get cut out quickly, like the Mini did. But
the numbers are roughly the
huge market.
The numbers are roughly the same, which is kind of interesting and a bit weird. So yeah, it's like you said, Karen. According to Roaming Chi, they're roughly 85% of iPhone pre-orders. I think this is in China, but we can assume there's probably some application beyond kind of worldwide there. 85% of like pre-orders were for the iPhone 14 Pro or Pro Max.
Right.
Which is so that only leaves 15%, and then less than 5% of the orders was for the iPhone 14 Plus, which is about what we used to hear when it was, it was the iPhone 13 and 12 mini. It was like Pro, decent, regular, decent, mini iPhone, less than 5%. So maybe
Yeah.
Apple is, knew it would, be like a broadly similar kind of uptake. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
the thing as well is it goes back to maybe what we talked about initially, which is I've got the 14 and the Pro, and I'm already struggling to think of reasons why you wouldn't make the jump. If you're looking at the iPhone 14 Plus, which is $100 more expensive, the jump to a Pro iPhone, even the smaller one, is half what it is from the regular iPhone
Yeah.
14. So you're saying I could spend $899 on the Plus, or I could stretch, $100 and get an iPhone 14 Pro, not with a bigger screen. It's it's even easier to say, well, why would you not buy the Pro as opposed to the regular iPhone 14, even though it is a bigger display?
Yeah, I
and
think
a lot of people don't want a big giant phone. My husband's where he works will actually buy him a new phone every couple of years, so he can have any model that he wants, any phone, any Android, any iPhone. And I said, why don't you get the iPhone Pro Max? I mean, it's this big, gorgeous phone. He's like, it's too big. He just isn't interested in that size. And I think it's a very specific market. People want the gigantic phone.
Yeah, I think I never expected it to do gangbusters. I thought maybe it would do a little better. But Karen, you bring up a good point that like the people who are pre-ordering this stuff are likely to lean Pro anyways. Even I think even the iPhone 14 in general, it is more aimed at people who are upgrading from like older devices and things like that. And I think the Plus is just kind of like an extra thing that people can sort of get excited about if they happen to be like maybe they really don't need a Pro phone because they don't like all the Pro extras, but they do like a big screen for whether it's movie watching or game playing or what have you. There's a use case there. But yeah, it's it'll be interesting to see if we get like a 2-year experiment and then Apple just drops this, or if they're certain enough that there's enough utility to this. And like I said, maybe it might even be like an accessibility play. We know that Apple cares about accessibility quite a bit. And I think, providing a bigger screen for at a, slightly discounted price that has all the kind of new features on it for the most part, new features that aren't Pro related, perhaps it is an accessibility play and they're thinking about that, which is, if that's true, then good.
Well, the bottom line is going to be money if it pays off. And the initial numbers are not necessarily that meaningful because like we've all said, that they're going to always skew heavily Pro. The real numbers that are going to matter are going to be the numbers over the next few months.
And because the iPhone 14 Plus is like it's a new body they had to make, even though it's similar, but they had to like make it is a new design. So they had to like make it more. That's why it's not launching until October 7th. So a few weeks away. So like that might have also tempered maybe some expectations, right? People be like, I don't really need to pre-order it right now. It's not even coming for a while yet. So that
or
there's
some
lots
people
of factors.
may have not wanted to wait if you need a phone. And
exactly.
Until it's not coming for 4 weeks, it can make a difference for some people.
Right.
I think as well the kind of the disparity Pro and not Pro also reflects what we've been saying about how the iPhone 14 generally is quite an underwhelming upgrade, and conversely, the iPhone 14 Pro is a really quite exciting upgrade in a few different ways. So yeah.
We've heard similar rumors to this one before, but Gurman has said now that Apple is actively testing, that's the words he used, an iPhone hardware subscription that could potentially launch later this year. So we've heard rumors to this before where Apple might think of, lending you a phone for so much money a month, and then you can then turn it, I guess, presumably sort of like the iPhone upgrade program a little bit. You could like turn it in for a new model and kind of keep actively sort of subscribing to the phone that you have. And as someone who doesn't have access to the Apple upgrade program here in Canada, something like this would appeal to me depending on what the price is, just because I like the idea of getting a new phone every year, even though I know you don't have to, but I like shiny things. And something like this could appeal to me, but Mark Gurman brings up a good point that like they might tie the hardware subscription into like Apple One and Apple Care at the same time, which I mean, I usually get Apple Care because that's just like a good kind of safe peace of mind thing. But I don't subscribe to Apple One. I only have a couple services that I really use from Apple, and I don't feel like Apple One really does me that much, and doesn't actually really save me quite anything. So I haven't gotten around to Apple One. So it's like, I don't know. It would depend what the price is to me. But like, Steven, run through this rumor and tell us exactly what Gurman's saying
Yeah, I
here.
think the big thing is, like you said, it is largely quite similar to we already have the upgrade program. The way Gurman describes it is it would differ from the current installment plan, because iPhone upgrade program is just the cost of a device divided by 20 months, and you pay an upfront
24.
fee.
24 months.
Oh, mine said 20 in this store today. Interesting.
In the US, it's in the US,
okay.
it's 24. At least it was when I worked at Apple.
So you pay it over the 2 year, and it is literally just the cost of an iPhone divided by however long your agreement is. But it does include Apple Care Plus for free, which is a nice bonus.
It's not free. You're paying for it. It's just divided up.
Is it?
Yeah, it's definitely not free. It's the iPhone upgrade program, at least in the US. And when I worked at the Apple Store, which was a couple of years ago, it was exactly the price of Apple Care Plus for 2 years and the cost of the iPhone divided into 24 equal pieces. So you didn't save any money, you didn't lose any money. It was exactly the same, just spread out over 24 months.
Interesting. Here the Apple Care Plus is like included, so it's like a no-brainer almost. Interesting.
So it's totally different.
But I think the crux of it is either after 1 year on the upgrade program, when the next phone comes out, you can give the phone back, get your new one, start a fresh 2 years, or you can keep it, pay out the rest of your deal, and then the phone is yours. I would assume with a subscription plan, the cost will be significantly cheaper, and you have to give the phone back.
Right, it's never yours.
Yeah.
You just
you're literally loaning a device from Apple, kind of like you said, Luke.
I still think it will be quite appealing, because the iPhone upgrade program, it comes out to something like roughly $50 a month. So if this new subscription plan was something like $5 a month, $10 a month, even $20 a month, even if it meant you never got to keep the phone, it still would be a huge savings on a month-to-month basis, especially for somebody like me that's getting a new phone every year anyway. So if I'm using, I'm actually not on the iPhone upgrade program because of some cockamamie cellular plan that I'm on. It's a long story. But I was on the iPhone upgrade program at one time, and I never waited the 2 years until I had paid my phone off. I always got a new one every year anyway. So I was just constantly paying, $40, $45, $50 a month as the price of the phones went up. And never actually keeping the phone or getting any money back for it. So I think a hardware subscription will be very appealing assuming it's a lot cheaper. And if they roll it into Apple One, even if they raise the price of the Apple One a little bit, $5, $10, $15, something like that, I think it will be a big hit.
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen Apple, recently, and really kind of ever since the evolution or the intro of like the Apple Card, which is kind of with Apple and Goldman Sachs, but like now that they have the Apple Pay Later system, which is completely done by Apple, right? That's all financed through Apple themselves. They're kind of getting themselves tied up in this, or not tied up, but actively sort of into this bit of a finance world, taking on Wall Street a little bit. So I think something like this, they have the money to do it. Obviously, they can finance it and do it themselves. They don't really need to whether they will, who knows, but they probably will. And if they can offer it, and it's also like a good way for countries that don't have access to the Apple upgrade program, because the carriers in that country have an oligarch and they make everybody in the country upset. I'm not talking about my country or anything.
So do you think that the subscription plan will be available in countries where the iPhone upgrade program is not?
If it's directly through Apple, I don't see why it wouldn't be. I'm not in. I mean, once again, so is the Apple.
Because the iPhone upgrade program is directly through Apple.
So I know that there's the reasons why it's not in Canada is because our carriers don't play nice with things like this. They want
the iPhone upgrade program, even though it's directly through Apple, you are limited to the main carriers. So
Yeah.
if you use like one of the sort of the offshoot characters, the offshoot carriers that
Mhm.
are not like the big ones, you can't do the iPhone upgrade program.
Yeah. So I'm hoping, I don't know for sure, but I'm thinking the reason why they're thinking about this is, first of all, it would probably make them a ton of money. And second of all, uh, maybe it's a way to reach newer customers to
Yeah.
get them into that thing. Right. And like you said, it will also come down to price. Like if the price is like more expensive than the Apple upgrade program, then why would you bother? If it's less expensive, then I think that's obviously more appealing.
It has to be less. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't charge the same thing and not give the
Yeah.
person the phone at
And
the
then
end. You know,
and then the
question is how much less.
the other interesting thing is, and there's no rumors to this effect. I just wonder, like, say they launch this hardware subscription, and it's like gangbuster hit, and then the Apple upgrade program kind of takes a dip. Do they eliminate that, and do they just go with the subscription model? Because then they're also keeping control of their stock, which if they get back, if people are upgrading every year or whatever they get back, they can like sell as refurbished, which they still make money on, and things like that. So it's interesting. It's interesting to what that might mean like far down the line. But I would be super interested to see what this is about. I'm not going to like immediately say, yes, I would 100% do this, but it's certainly appealing to me from somebody who like would love to have a new iPhone every year just so I can play with new shiny things. It's appealing. It's an appealing, and I mean, we all know how subscriptions work. We all have subscriptions to things. I mean, subscription fatigue is is a real thing. But like, I mean, the value of an iPhone, the value of a smartphone, and any smartphone, really, you can very easily in your mind parse like how much is worth it for you to buy it every month and not necessarily own it. So that's an interesting choice. I'd be interested also to see like what the fine print is in terms of like what you can and can't do with your phone since you don't own it. And
how much trouble you get in if you lose it or break it. That'll be another big...
Right. Like how many times you're allowed to break it, and
yeah.
You know,
well, I mean, Apple care. I'm assuming,
since they've just increased the number. They've just made it unlimited. You can break it when you own a phone. You can break it as many times as you want with Apple Care Plus. Which is new.
Yeah, and you can just pay. You keep paying every month, and now you're covered with Apple Care for as long as you pay it. So I would assume that the hardware subscription would have that kind of baked in. That way, as long as you are subscribing to that phone, you would have Apple Care. Of course, Apple Care, there's still service fees. If you crack your screen, you got to go pay your service fee to get it fixed and stuff like that. So it's not like it's completely free, but it does make it a lot cheaper than if you just have to pay for it outright. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm curious. It says maybe later this year, so that would be interesting if that's maybe something that also comes out at the October event. That would be an interesting an interesting development for sure. You think that they would try? I mean, it might just not be ready, or there might be still checks and balances they got to do. But you think that they would have like tried to announce that alongside the iPhones, right? I don't.
It's weird to announce it a couple of months after the iPhone launch.
But maybe that's smart because they'll have more stock by that point, and I don't know. So maybe they're thinking about that, just that way. If it people want to go jump in on it right away, they can. I'm not sure. It might just be that they don't have all their I's dotted and T's crossed yet, and it's just the way that the business is.
Yeah.
You never know.
Well, I'll be very interested to see how this develops.
Yeah. The Emmys were just last weekend, correct? I did.
They were the 12th.
Yeah.
4 days ago.
Oh, 4 days ago. Okay. Yeah. I didn't end up watching the Emmys. I meant to, but I'm in the middle of a move right now, and my TV is either unplugged or not available. So I haven't really been watching it, but Ted Lasso, surprisingly, wins back-to-back Emmys. Severance also won some, and in total, Apple landed 9 total awards.
I was fairly disappointed in Apple TV Plus's win to nomination ratio. Let's put it that way. It was nominated for so many more Emmys between Ted Lasso and Severance and all the other shows, and it got, I think, just one acting win, and that was for Jason. Oh, who
Yeah,
else won?
Brett Goldstein.
Oh, Brett.
Roy,
Okay,
Roy
right.
Kent got
Yeah.
supporting
Okay,
actor as well.
and they were both for Ted Lasso, and they're both great, well deserved Emmys. But there were so many more that were deserving that didn't.
Ted Lasso was also the only one that got like a big award, like the outstanding comedy. Whereas
Comedy,
a lot of the wins, like Severance, won for
Severance
like
got little ones.
Title design, music composition. Carpool Karaoke got one for outstanding short form comedy. Schmigadoon, outstanding original music. And Home Before
It was
Dark.
terrible. It was terrible. I'm just gonna say the music was terrible. The whole show was terrible.
Schmigadoon. If you're a Broadway musical like fan and aficionado, I think you would like Schmigadoon. I like Schmigadoon quite a bit.
Oh, did you like it?
Yeah, I'm a big like Broadway guy. So is my partner. We're big Broadway people, and we love musicals a lot.
That's funny because
it's kind of right up our alley. I know Steven hates
my
that
husband's
stuff.
a huge Broadway fanatic, and
he didn't like it
more than I like Broadway. Okay, it depends on what it is, but he likes it more than I do, and he watched one episode of Schmigadoon. He's like, I'm done.
Annie in the comments says that she agrees with you, Karen, that For All Mankind was robbed.
Yes, I wrote a lengthy editorial about that. I interviewed NPR's TV critic Eric Deggans about it. He didn't agree with me that For All Mankind deserved all the Emmys, but I still maintain it's one of the best shows on television, and it should have gotten some nominations. But given that it didn't, it couldn't win any. So I jumped on to rooting for Severance, which is another one of my favorite shows, and was disappointed that it got so few.
Yeah, it's hard though. Like when we did our Emmy roundup a number of weeks ago before the Emmys, when they were announced the nominations, like everything was up against tough competition. It's the golden age of TV. There's just so much good TV out there these days that it's hard to swipe an award. You really gotta do something. That being said, just a quick side note. I rewatched Coda myself, and then I actually showed Coda for the first time to my partner, and she also loved it. And there's a reason why it won Best Picture. It's just so good. It's just such a good movie.
Yeah. Well, what I liked about Coda is that it's appealing to everyone. I mean, I would recommend it to my mom. I did recommend it to my mom, and she loved it. She watched it a bunch of times because she recommended it to her friends. Watch it again with them. But I also recommend it to my kids. I mean, it's good for all generations. Just there's nobody that I would say, and that movie's not for you. Do you know what I mean? It's just a.
It is people always talk about how movies can be like Oscar bait, and like I would kind of classify Coda as Oscar bait, but like it's so well done. It's so well done, and so it's entertaining from beginning to end. It tells like a very impactful and emotional story, and some of the ways that it uses some of the cues that the director did and the sound design and stuff is just phenomenal. Like I was talking to Karen, which is also the name of my partner, which gets confusing sometimes here at work. But I was talking to my partner, and I asked her opinions afterwards. And the first thing she said, she was like, I loved how in the two like very or the like 2 or 3 super emotional moments, all the sound cuts out and you're kind of experiencing it as her parents who are deaf would experience those moments. And it's only done a couple times. And like a movie like this, I could see other directors wanting to use that more, like wanting to use that gimmick. Not that it's a gimmick, but like wanting to use that style a lot more.
It was well placed.
Yeah, it was super well placed during like the really emotionally impactful parts.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved that.
And it gave you that sense of like, oh my goodness, like could you imagine being there right now, not being able to hear, but seeing the stuff that's happening around you. And it's really good. It's so well done. Please go watch it. That's my side note. Go watch Coda if you haven't done it yet.
Nothing to do with the Emmys, just Apple TV Plus. If you have it, go watch it.
Yeah. All right. So Steven has the iPhone 14 Pro in his hand, but does he have the iPhone 15 Pro? No, because that's not even coming out until next year. But we already have rumors about it, of course.
Come on, Steven, reach into the future and grab that one for us.
Steven, what are we hearing about the iPhone 15 Pro and also some Macs coming up in the next bit?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing to preface with is with iPhone 14, Apple has made quite a big divide with its Pro and not Pro devices by only giving the Pro iPhone the new A16 chip. The new iPhone 14 comes with the same Pro chip from last year, so it has one more GPU core, but it's a very, very slight upgrade. Next year, Apple is expected to continue that, so I would expect them to now filter down. So next year, the iPhone 15 will get A16, or maybe like A16, and then A17 will go into the Pro, and there will always be this extra divide. But next year's A17 is expected to be the first made on TSMC's new 3 nanometer process. So Apple did say that the new A16 is made on the 4 nanometer process, which you would think sounds like a measurement, right? But according to TSMC, like, it doesn't mean anything. It's just like a random like designation. So the smaller the number, the better the chip, but it's not representative, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
So the new A16 is a 4 nanometer chip. That's a very marginal improvement over the 5 nanometer process, which is what the A15 and the M1 and M2 Max and everything are made. Yeah. But Apple's expected next year to adopt the 3 nanometer process. Now, according to TSMC, this will be about 15% faster if you're using the same amount of power, or uses 30% less power at the same speed. So next year, the A17 processor coming to iPhone 15 Pro, hopefully, will be a very big leap over the current A16, much more so than A15 to A16. And this is also because Apple Silicon is kind of shared in this way. This is also the foundation of the M3 Mac. So for that A17 and future M3 Max, which we will probably see next year, this is the rough timescale of this rumor, we can expect really quite big. It's a 70% logic density gain, which makes for, like I said, either 15% more speed on the same amount of wattage, or if you're using the same amount of the same speed, you're using 30% less. So that means faster processors in the same packaging and kind of size, longer battery life, better efficiency, better cooling, all sorts, and significantly more so than some of the previous jumps we've seen with some of these processors. So yeah, this is very exciting.
Yeah, and the rumor mill keeps going. We can't stop it anytime soon. We'll never be able to stop it. So iPhone 14 or iPhone 15 rumors abound already. Moving on, let's just quickly talk. Mainly, this is me who wants to talk about this because I've been testing it out. Have either of you gotten watchOS 9 now that it's officially out? Have you been trying out low power mode?
I haven't. No.
Okay, so I was very curious because during the launch of low power mode, Apple talked a lot about how it would affect the Series 8, and then kind of very at the brief end was just like, oh yeah, you can get it on any watchOS 9 device. And that was kind of it. And then if you looked at Apple's like materials that were talked about low power mode, it was always comparing it to the Series 8. Like it'd be like, oh, the Series 8 can get up to 36 hours of battery life. And so it got me thinking, does that mean that like it doesn't really work as well on older devices? So the very first thing I did was I grabbed my Apple Watch SE, the first generation, not the new one, but the first generation, and I slapped it on, I charged it, I looked at the time, and I said, all right, I'm just going to wear it and see what happens. And I'm happy to report it, for the most part, it works how they say it does. It gave me about 35 to 37 hours. I kind of fell asleep during the last bit of it. So because for some reason I started at 3 p.m, which meant my 36 hours was up like 3 a.m. the next day. So I didn't quite see the end, but like I went to bed with an hour left. So I was at 35 hours and I still had like 9%. So I'm pretty certain that would have gotten me through at least another hour, probably maybe even another one. So somewhere between like 35 and 37, which is good. However, I will say this, I didn't use it too much during that time. I mean, I did a lot of packing, so it was kind of like tracking my movement and stuff, but I didn't really run much workouts. I did like one little 20-minute walk workout in the morning. I did some Siri requests. I set a few timers. I messaged a little bit, but mostly it was pretty light usage. So the second time I did it on my Apple Watch Series 7, and I used it much more heavily, and it still got to like around, once again, I did the thing where I fell asleep at the end, but I got around like 33-ish hours. And that was kind of like with tracking a few more workouts, using it a little more frequently, checking out a little more frequently, things like that. So it definitely, the Apple says that it can get up to 36 hours. And I think that's obviously depending on use, as all battery numbers are. So I think but it's literally, especially since it's a feature that kind of snuck up on us sort of at the end, because we were all expecting it on the new watches. And then they said, hey, it's on everything. I'm really impressed with it. I think, if you're really hardcore into fitness and you track a lot of fitness and things like that, it is going to help extend your battery, but you're not going to kind of get that 36 hours out of it if you're using it really, really heavily. But like, if you're going away for a day or something like that, you're not going to be around, a charger, and you just kind of you just want it to be accessible for that time. You throw on low power mode, and as long as you're not like, constantly using it, it's probably going to get you through that day and more. So I think overall it's just like one of the best quality of life improvements that Apple's done recently, and watchOS 9 is kind of full of those, from like fitness tracking getting better, the low power mode now, just all sorts of things, a few small UI changes that actually make a big difference, like the notifications when you're actually using the phone, or the watch, are just like a small band now and don't take over the whole screen, which is like super useful. I think like it's probably the best quality of life update that we've had in quite a while for watch. And it's also like added so much more to it that it's a really good upgrade. I would say if like anybody was like tentative about it for whatever reason, I would say don't be. I think like all the way from the Apple Watch Series 4 to the Apple Watch, the newest 8, like watchOS 9 is going to make your watch feel much better.
It's almost like a new lease of life, isn't it? That it's like you've like doubled the battery life, but you don't have to buy a new device. Luke, just to confirm, did you have low power mode on the whole time? It wasn't like
the entire time
until
while you worked out.
Yeah. So it wasn't like you started and then as the battery started to drain, you're like, oh, I'll switch to low power mode. So this is a full low power mode test.
Yeah, that was like full low power mode, completely on for the entire time. Obviously, I would say like, I think like low power mode kind of makes more sense to use as not an always on thing, because it does obviously limit quite a few things. Like it doesn't take background heart rate. So that means you can't get heart rate notifications, and you also can't track your heart rate unless you actively go into the heart rate. When you actively try and use it, it'll still use it. Like with fitness tracking, it'll still track your heart rate during your run. But usually when it's on normal mode, it's doing it all the time, but it's not doing that right now. When it's away from your phone, it can't quite do as much either. So it does limit and like turn off some options. It's not great for like, like I said, it's not great for people who are really reliant on, some of the health features, things that people that want those heart notifications. Obviously you're going to want to keep those on. You're not going to want low power mode all the time. So, but it still has a use case where like, say you get to like 40% power, and you've kind of used it for the most part of what you're going to do that day, but you're going to need a little bit more. You can kind of throw low power mode on at that point. But it's not kind of like the iPhone, which I think like, people could say you don't do this with the iPhone, but I think a lot of people do this with the iPhone. They just throw on low power mode, like kind of immediately, because it doesn't really do much. It like makes background app refresh a little slower. And there's a few things, but like, it doesn't quite turn off as many features as the Apple Watch one does. So it's not really something you probably want to use like constantly, unless you are a really light Apple Watch user and you mostly use it just for like kind of tracking your day-to-day activity. And you don't use it a lot for workouts or a lot for messaging or things like that. Then I think like, sure, you can throw it on low power mode all you want. But I think for the most part, it's just going to let you extend your battery life when you really need to, when you're going to kind of be away from a charger. And I'm interested, like hopefully at some point I got to strap on an Ultra and see if I can, get it all the way to 60 and see what that feels like. Yeah. That'd be kind of fun. But
was there anything while you were testing that you tried to do and then you were like, oh crap, low power mode's on, I can't do that, and you were like missing the functionality?
Not really. I'd say like Apple says that like it can be a little less responsive, like Siri can be a little less responsive.
I read that.
And like messaging and messages can come kind of more delayed and stuff. I didn't experience that when I had it on either time on my Series 7 or my SE. I didn't really experience that. I felt like Siri worked fine. My notifications came in on time. So I didn't really notice much. I guess like the background heart thing, for example, like when I use sleep tracking, which you can still do, but it won't track your heart rate during sleep.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a little interesting, which I guess makes sense. Obviously, it's trying to save battery power and you put it in low power mode, but I kind of thought that would be one of the use cases where it would like turn on. But it didn't. And so I thought that was interesting. But I don't think it really affected me too much. I usually use sleep tracking just to kind of see my sleep stages, which are now included in watchOS 9, which I think is a good quality of life update for sleep tracking. So yeah, I didn't find there was anything like too egregious. It's just like but I also don't use the phone where I'm not as reliant on the heart rate notifications, right? I don't, I'm not worried about maybe I should be, but I'm not worried about my phone all of a sudden telling me I have a high or low heart rate, because as of right now, I don't seem to have those issues. It could always happen. Who knows? Yeah. But
I guess the good thing about low power mode as well is you can dip in and out. So if you come to say you are going to the gym or you want the full functionality, you can dip out of low power mode, and as soon as you're done using the watch, you can go back into low power mode and kind of off and on. You don't have to do what you did and commit to low power mode for the whole battery lifespan.
I mean, obviously you were testing it, so you had good reason to. But for most people, it's just a nice option to have.
But I think like especially for some older Apple watches that the battery health maybe isn't quite as high up there now. I think this will be like a good way to sort of extend it until you're ready to upgrade. So I've been having fun with it. My full watchOS 9 review is up on iMore. Go check that out if you're curious about it at all. I definitely say it's like a must upgrade for pretty much your Apple Watch. It's very, very good. Obviously it can't handle the Series 3 or earlier, so it's only on Series 4 or later.
Right. And we have the iOS 16 review up as well. So
yes,
we're going to check that out.
Yeah, check that out. We've talked about iOS 16 a lot, but go check out Christine's review on iMore as well. All right, we're going to end off here with a little bit of a fun story about emoji. So hate them or love them, emoji is still a very popular form of communication across social media, but not just social media, in workplaces, in dating apps, all sorts of things. Emojis are very, very prevalent, and Adobe runs a trend report on emoji every year, and this year was kind of interesting. Apparently 73% of US emoji users think that people who use emoji are friendlier, funnier, and cooler than those that don't. So that's a pretty big number, actually. Like I wouldn't have expected. Like I use emoji a lot because I think they're fun and they're cute and they're a fun way to sort of interact with people. But I never really thought about, the like what other people think about me using emojis, because most of the people I talk to that I use emojis are like good friends. But yeah, there's so many interesting things in this report. We have it up on iMore. You can go check it out. But like 91% of US emoji users agree that emoji makes it easier for themselves to express what they're feeling. So like there may be a way that there may be something behind that, like the fact that there's so many different emotions you can pick from.
The old expression, a picture paints 1,000 words.
Yeah.
There are some great emojis that like they can express things, like that words can't. Like I will get to this, but like the skull emoji for like, was like, I am like deceased at the thought of like whatever has just been said or whatever. I find to be very it's very pertinent sometimes.
Okay, so no cheating, guys. No cheating. What are the last 5 emojis that you used? I'll go first because I have it pulled up.
Are we in frequently used? Yeah. Is that
go
you guys go first.
It's the left column, the left-hand column. Is that
yes.
that's I mean, this matches what I do. So I have the crying with laughter face is my like most used emoji by far. closely followed, I would assume, by the skull, as you said. That's one I've like gotten to recently. I have what I used to think, and probably what you think, is the prayer emoji, but is also could be the high five emoji, like it depending on which like angle you think you're looking at. So the hands together.
No, he means this one.
Yeah, that one exactly.
Oh, I never thought of that as a high five. I use it for thank you.
One. Yeah,
I
that
use
is
it for
also
thank you
yes,
sometimes.
absolutely. And then I have the just crying with crying face, and then I have the eyes because you can't beat the eye emoji for when something good's going down.
Yeah, I use that one a lot too. My last 5 that I use, they're not necessarily my most frequently used, but the last 5 were the black cat, because one of my kids just got a new kitten and it's a black cat. So we go back and forth a lot about the cat. The Apple Watch emoji and the iPhone emoji, because I was tweeting about them for iMore. The 2 pink hearts emoji, I use that one a ton. Who knows when I used it last? To my kids, my husband, I use it all the time. And the celebration emoji, the one that's like one of those things that you would blow and all the confetti's coming out of it. That emoji, again, that was for iMore because I was tweeting about iPhone launch day and on social media.
My most frequent one used, as by far, because it is like my favorite emoji, is the upside down smiley face, which according to the trend report, it's actually the number 3 most misunderstood emoji in the US.
Yeah.
I like it because I use it when I mean, like, you know, that the gif of like the dog in all the fire around him and it says this is fine.
Like that's fine. Yes.
Yeah, that's how I use it.
That.
It's like when I say something sarcastically and I'm like, this is fine, and then I put the little, like, that's what that means to me. And I think most of my friends that I talk to understand that, but apparently it's misunderstood. So maybe I should rethink that. And then my other ones are pretty basic. The heart eyes emoji, the kissy emoji, the shades emoji, and then the eyes as well, because the eyes are always kind of a good response to sort of like, oh, I'm looking at this, or oh, I didn't know that, or it's one that we use often at work, I find, as well, when somebody posts an interesting a link in our chat. I love emojis, and I think this is super cool, this like trend report, and it goes through like a lot of stuff about, like, you know, emojis in the dating world, and like ones that make you more likable, ones that make you less likable. How
some are downright creepy. We won't.
How emojis might be used at work. You know, you might not think about it, but if you have a virtual workplace, much like us, sparingly, but importantly, like, you know, to quickly share ideas, to make team decisions, to boost creativity. Like, there's all these different stats.
I feel like there's a big difference between using an emoji as a reaction to something in our Slack, which is our kind of like our virtual water cooler, and using it in an email to somebody.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, don't put emojis in your emails. That's yeah.
Absolutely, but use them all over social media. Use them, you know, when you're communicating with whatever. I think they're fun. And that's our show. That is a jam-packed full of so many different things. Well, I'm sure we'll have more to talk about next week once, you know, Steven's actual review is out. Our iPhone 14 Pro review by Christine will likely be out by that point. I'm sure we're going to have some Apple Watch models in there as well. So there's going to be lots of things. Stay tuned to iMore. As always, you can tweet us at iMore on Twitter, or hit us up at iMoreGram on Instagram if you want to ask us any questions. If you want us to talk about something on the show, we're always interested to hear from our listeners. Speaking of that, thank you so much for everyone who is listening live. We really appreciate you. And anyone who's listening in their podcatcher of choice, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate having this audience to talk to every week. And of course, a big thank you to Jim Metzendorf, our audio editor, who always makes us sound so good. And until next time, if you're waiting on an iPhone 14 or an iPhone 14 Pro, I hope the wait is as short as possible.
Or an Apple Watch.
Or an Apple Watch, yes. If you're waiting on any of new hardware, I hope the wait is as short as possible. If you already have it in your hands, I'm happy for you. I hope you enjoy it. Until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.